Alright, what's up everybody? Welcome back. We have another video today having to do with my beautiful GR86. We got this really cool P3 vent gauge that we're going to be installing in the GR86. Like I mentioned in my last video, if you guys watched the oil accumulator video, the AccuSum system that we have installed in the car, I did mention that I had this and that we were going to be installing it. And yeah, so basically what we got this for is to monitor the oil pressure within the car, because we did install that AccuSum, so I want to see kind of the changes that happen when you turn that AccuSum on. Shout out to P3. I reached out to them. I guess you can say this is my first partnership with a company, and they were super cool about it. So yeah, again, shout out to them. This gauge does more than just oil pressure. So the oil pressure, we do have to get a sensor and wire it into this, into the box actually, that can actually show on this gauge. This gauge can do so much more than just oil pressure. Some of the things it can do is it can read boost pressure, it can read vacuum if you have a turbo in your car. I don't. It does AFRs. It also can read DTC, so your check engine light, if it does come on for any reason, it will read the codes, which is super cool. You don't have to add like a, you know, OBD2 scanner. You can just read it right off the gauge that you have here. Yeah, just a bunch of different things, which we can go through once it's installed in the car, but that's just giving you some example of some of the things that this gauge can do. And it also has inputs, so you can add different types of sensors, which is the reason why we're using this to add a oil pressure sensor. It is the cleanest gauge that I've seen for this car. Mounts right into the vent. You don't have to get a gauge pod, and it doesn't have to look all like Fast and Furious 1 where it's like gauges all over the place and they're all different colors and shit. Like, this is gonna be super cool, super clean, and I kind of like the clean look. I like that it's not super distracting and not in my way. And once I'm on the track, I don't want like a gauge pod that's right in my face. I want something that I can kind of look at from the side and not distract me from what's actually in front of me. First thing I want to do is I want to kind of just connect all of this and make sure that it works before I start installing all of this stuff into the car, taking things apart and, you know, getting into it. We're gonna do that, and let me take you over to the rest of the parts that came in this kit so I can kind of explain what everything is, how it's gonna connect, and then we can test it out. Alright, so let's talk about all the things that we got on this washing machine, because I don't have a workbench, unfortunately. I don't have space for it, but we have the gauge pod, which is like the vent mounted gauge. So we're gonna insert this into the actual vent in the car, and it has this connection here. This connection is going to go into this box, so you can see this will go and connect right into here. And this box is like the actual module. It's basically the computer of the gauge pod. This just displays what this kind of reads. Then on the other side of this control box is connections. And these are the connections that we have here. So we're going to connect this into here. And these are basically the wires that run into your OBD2 port, right? And then we have these kind of extra wires that we have here at the end. And these are for a extra gauge, if you wanted to add a gauge, which we are. So we have these wires, and then we have this pressure gauge. Oil pressure gauge goes up to 150 PSI. You need 150 PSI or above, because the car itself at startup goes a little bit above 100. So remember that, 150 PSI or more oil pressure gauge. Those are going to be connected to these wires here. I'll explain a little bit more once we're at that stage. But we got this OBD2. Now, we also got this, which is an optional part. It's an OBD2 splitter. So this basically connects into your OBD2, and it gives you 2 additional OBD2 ports. One of them is going to be for our gauge, and then the other one is in case you wanted to still use your OBD2 port for something else, you basically have one available to use. So we have that piece right there. And then the last thing that I have, and this is not a part of P3's kit, but it is something that I personally needed, and this is an adapter. And this adapter is going to go from the valve that I set up on the accumulator, and then this is going to go into the sensor itself. So this is basically for me so that I can run this in my car. Depending on where you mount yours, you're going to need an adapter depending on what adapter you need, right? So mine is a 1/4 MPT male to 1/8. So 1/4 is the bigger side, which is going to go into my valve, and then the 1/8 is going to be what goes into the actual sensor, right? Depending on where you put it on the block, you might have to get a different type of adapter. I know the ones that go into the oil galley is a different size. I don't remember exactly what size it is. You might have to look that up. But for my specific case, I'm getting this adapter. I'm using this adapter. In your case, you might have to use a different one. So just keep that in mind. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna connect this control box to this right here, right? So the actual gauge is connected to the control box, and then I'm gonna grab this right here, connect it to this, and then I'm going to connect this to my OBD2 port that I have in the car and just verify that this gauge is actually working. So let's go ahead and move over to the car. Alright, I got my light on so that you guys can see in here. Don't worry about the dirtiness. And we got Handro just chilling in the car. I don't know what the hell he's doing, but he wants to be a part of this video apparently, so we'll let him. My OBD2 port is right over here. I can actually feel it with my fingers. So I'm going to go ahead and connect it to it. Alright, and it's connected, and everything here is connected as well. So you can kind of see it's got some lights flashing. So I just read the instructions, and it says that the engine has to be turned on for the P3 gauge to actually function. So let me turn the car on. I'm going to open the garage slightly, and then we'll move on from there. We got 128 and 129, 130. Alright. Speed is obviously going to be 0. Battery voltage. RPM. 6. Okay, cool. So now that we tested the functionality of this gauge and we know that it works, I think what I want to do is I want to install the gauge first in the car, and then we're going to install the oil pressure sensor and then wire it all up. Now this control box and this wiring that we have here is going to be hanging down under the front dash on the driver's side. So I'm also going to be wiring and routing the wires from the oil pressure sensor through the firewall and down to the driver's side. Because the wiring is going to be right next to the wiring here and exposed, and I'll be able to kind of connect these down there, I'm going to install the gauge first and put it into the car, and then from there we'll do the wiring of the sensor. It shouldn't be too hard. You know, these wires don't make much sense now, but the nice thing about P3 is that they provide a little book, and in the book it kind of gives you some instructions on, you know, how to test the gauge before you put it in. And they also give you QR codes, and those QR codes will take you to their website where they have instructions for every vehicle that they offer the P3 gauge for, installation instructions, and also wiring schematics for inputs, analog inputs, which is what our oil pressure gauge is. It's super awesome. This little pamphlet, I haven't seen this with, you know, any other modification that I bought. Even the ones that come from Japan, they give you like a sheet and it's all in Japanese and you kind of have to translate it yourself or try. But this is awesome. The QR codes to the website really changes things. Like the fact that I can do that and I can pull it up on my iPad and just kind of look through it while I'm installing the gauge is super fucking awesome. So shout out to them, shout out to the ease of installation and the amount of data that's provided and information that's provided to help you install it. So let's start working at that. All right, so the first thing I have to do is I have to take this vent pod out so that I can put the gauge in and then route. I think I have to take this off too and then route, hi Hanjo, and then route the cabling down because it's gonna go to the OBD2 port, which is right here. So let me start taking this out and then we will go back to the bench and disassemble this so that we can put the gauge in there. All right, let's get to working on this. So when you take out this right here, you'll actually see that there is a screw right down there, and that holds this whole vent pod in. So once we take that out, there's just a couple clips you can pull back and then this should come out. Just like that, this is out. Now we just have to disassemble this. All right, so taking this apart, first off, we gotta grab these little pieces right here and kind of pry up on them, which is gonna let this kind of middle section of it come out. So I'm just gonna put a flathead in here and just kind of push. I don't want to be too aggressive with it because I don't want to break the tabs. There's 3 of these all around the vent pod. So there's 3 of them. See that one right there? That one's already loose. There's this one right here. And then there's another one tucked in back there. So keep working at these until they come out. All right, cool. Didn't break any tabs. They're all still there. So this piece is off of this. Now we got this whole section right here. There's a tiny little screw right here, which is gonna disassemble this piece from this piece. So let's get that piece taken out, that little bolt. All right. Got that little bolt out. Keep that somewhere safe. And then, boom, comes out to 2 parts. All right, cool. So now that this piece is disassembled, what we actually need is this piece right here. You can see that there's like a little bracket piece, which is kind of the center. It's 0 degrees. It's the top of the actual vent. And what we want to do is we want to grab this gauge, grab the wiring, and we need to tuck the wiring somewhere on this gauge, right? From what I've seen, the best place to route it through is through this hole right here. So where the top is on the left side of the gauge, run it through this hole right here. So that's what we're gonna do. Just gonna grab this cable and just kind of tuck it through there, and it fits perfectly, which is great. Don't have to cut it or anything, don't have to modify it. It actually feels like it's made to fit straight. Like once you have it in your hands, you'll understand, but if you turn it a little bit, you can feel that it kind of comes out of place and doesn't feel right. Once you put it straight, it feels right. So this 3D printed piece that they have back here looks like it was made to kind of fit right, which is really good manufacturing, honestly. All right, we got that in its place. And then on the back, there's that screw hole, and there's this long screw that they provided. So what we have to do is we have to screw this in the hole that they... We have to screw this in the place of where that small tiny screw was. Just kind of get it through into the gauge. So after tightening it all the way, gauge is facing forward, it's facing straight, it's at the same angle as the vent, and it actually doesn't move anymore. It's tight. So it just needs to be tightened. It feels like it might crack it, but it doesn't. You gotta tighten pretty hard up until it stops moving. Don't over tighten because this is plastic, so you might crack it, but tighten up until the gauge is no longer moving around and it fits snug. Then you should be good to continue on. Now at this point we can reassemble this back together. Remember that this is the bottom corner, and you'll see on the actual piece, the bracket or whatever we want to call this itself, that this little notch here is meant to put this right in the same spot. So you can see it won't fit any other way. It'll fit just like that, and then you just push it back in. So now we got the gauge in the vent pod. We can probably put this back and then route this cable in the car. So now that we got this installed, we can kind of just put it back in its place. Now as for this cable, you'll see in the air channel here that in between that and this bracket there's like a little kind of area that will take you down under here. That I saw this. So on these screws, they're slightly different, so don't get them mixed up. This one, the threading is much closer than this one. You can see that this one is more of like a wood screw, which is usually used on like plastic pieces, right? So this is the one that goes into the vent pod. This one with the shorter, the closer threading and the flat end is what goes into the side. We have our control box here mounted with some 3M tape on the back. I use a bunch of 3M tape because I just like to go overkill. I want to mount it probably right here. Let's go ahead and mount this first, and we'll connect that cable. Maybe we'll get some zip ties and just kind of zip tie all of this together so it's not hanging super far down. Or just creating a mess all over the place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this, and then I'm going to take one of these and connect it to P3 gauge cabling, and then this I'm just going to mount it somewhere so that I can still use my OD2 when I want to. And then again, wire tucking and wiring management so that all of this is kind of clean under there and not super visible. Right there. Alright, now I'm going to connect this to the actual gauge. Now we got all this loose wire and we got this spare OBD2 port. The gauge part of this video is done. It's installed. It looks great. I haven't tested it yet, but we tested it before installing and everything worked, so that's good. At this point, what I want to do is I want to install the oil pressure sensor and then wire it up to the analog wires that we have kind of hanging down over here. After all that's done, we can turn this gauge on and look at all the functionality of it. So let's get that done. Alright, cool. So for this part of this process, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to extend these wires. So we have black, red, and green. I'm just going to extend these, give them a couple feet. Probably give them like 4 or 5 feet, just so that it can go from the valve that I have all the way to the firewall. so as I mentioned before, this is my electronic valve. In that valve there is a like oil galley. What we're going to do is we're going to remove that plug. So we're going to insert that vibrant adapter in there first, and then we'll insert the sensor after. These are going to have to be Teflon taped. So I'm going to do that first, and then we'll start working on removing this plug. I'm just going to grab a rag and just kind of keep it under there just in case. Alright, I got my rags. I got my hex bit. That's the right size for this plug. Okay. Okay, just a couple drops of oil, no big deal. Okay, I got my Teflon taped adapter. I'm gonna start screwing in. Alright, got my Teflon taped sensor. Alright, sensor's in. I just got to tighten everything. I might have to adjust the angle a little bit, but it's in there. Alright boys, so we got the sensor installed. Maybe you can see, maybe you can't, but right down there, there we go. Right down there we got the sensor with the adapter in there. I did turn the car on, gave it a couple revs, made sure that there was no oil leaking out, and it's not. So we are good there for now. We'll have to, of course, keep an eye on it and make sure that we don't see any oil. If we do start seeing some oil, then we have to reseal. But for now, we are good. Okay, so I have my loom, which I finished up. So this is the end to the sensor, the wiring loom that goes all the way to the end. And then I got my 3 wires there. So I have to put that through the firewall to get it into the driver's seat. And the best way to do so is to push it through with something. So we have this paintbrush that Danielle owns. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tape this to the paintbrush and then push it through the firewall to get this end of it in. Once it's down there, we can do all the wiring for it and get it ready. Okay, it's plugged in, and then we're going to route this the same way that we routed this, the AccuSump. You can see here that the fireball plug thing is right there. So, grab this guy and just kind of stick it in there. I already have something going through the firewall, so I'm just going to kind of put it right next to it. Okay, it looks like it went through. So now we're just going to pull it on the inside. Alright, now that we got that all wired into the car, let's bring you on the inside of the car. And then the only thing that's left is wiring the sensor, the oil pressure sensor, into the P3 gauge, and then we are good to go. So let's get that done. It's going to be a little hard to get you the best angle here to show you what we're doing, but to explain what I'm doing, the oil pressure sensor is actually from P3 gauges as well, which makes this process a little easier because they provide the wiring schematics and stuff on their website. They tell you what wires to tap into and everything, which is amazing. So now we just have to tap into the right wires, and all of this process should be done. So we have all this extra wire. I want it to be about this length. I'm just literally gonna cut right here. And we got our 3 wires again. One of them is gonna be a chassis ground, which is the black wire. Red is gonna go to this purple, which is the little harness that it comes with on the box. And then the green is gonna go to the brown wire, which is analog 1. I'm gonna cut out the purple wire from this little connector. Purple to red and heat shrunk. Now I gotta do green. Where's green? Green to brown, which again, it's like a purpley brown. It's labeled analog 1. And then the black in here is gonna go to the ground, which is that bolt right over there. So I'm gonna finish up here and then I'll show you the final product and we'll test on the P3 gauge. All right, so I just configured the oil pressure sensor and I tested it to make sure that it's working, and it looks like we're good. So let me go on and show you what the wiring looks like. I did have an issue, which I'll show you guys and explain it, and then we can go from there. So if you look in here, we got our wiring loom. We have our green, which went to our brown. We have our red, which went to our purple. And then our ground, it's kind of hard to see, but it came out the side and we grounded it to that bolt right there. You can see that, and it's what holds up the OBD2 port. So we did that because once I tried to ground it to here, which is the same place the switch, the toggle switch for the AccuSump is grounded, but it caused an issue where now my toggle switch light won't come on. It still works, the toggle switch still works, but the light won't come on. But it's fine as long as it works. That's all that I care about. So we also zip tied the second OBD2 port right over here. So if I ever need to plug anything in, it's right here. Really good spot. So that's it for wiring. And here is the P3 gauge. So like I said, I already configured the analog 1, which is the oil pressure sensor, into the gauge. So I can show you guys how exactly to do that, but let's turn the car on. We're gonna have to turn the car on and then I can show you all of it. All right, so let's turn the car on. So you can see this is my oil pressure setup right now, and if I switch on the AccuSump, which like I said the light isn't working for some reason, but if I switch it on, you can see my pressure going up, which is my stored oil going into the engine. Super sick. So I turned it back off so it'll push all that oil back in. But you can see my oil pressure is working, and to set that up what I had to do was I had to press both these buttons at the same time. It takes you to this config menu and then you scroll down to analog 1, and if you press this button it's going to toggle, it starts at N, you turn it on to yes, and then you go to PS, which is pressure, and then you hold down the right button and the screen will turn off, but once it turns back on, it is configured. So here we go, we got oil pressure looking good, and then we can still go through all of our other menus like coolant temp, 185, our speedometer, which is at 0 because we are not moving anywhere. We have our battery voltage at 14.2. This is our RPM, so if we change that, this is this our RPM? Maybe I didn't press the next button. We have oil temp, we have our intake air temp. This is what I believe is our exhaust gas temps. This I am not sure. This might be throttle position. I'll have to look that one up, but throttle position. This one says throttle, but that doesn't change that, so I don't know what that is. AFR, 0 to 60 time, boost, which we don't have any boost, so it goes to negative. And then our oil pressure again, super sick. Let me look up what those other ones are and I'll get back to you on that. So this is ignition timing. So this shows you your ignition timing. This is your throttle position. So if you step on the gas, the angle goes up. These are all the inputs that you have. Like I said, you have two analog inputs. My first one is to my oil pressure, which is mainly what I'm going to be using this for, right there. I guess at this point I can take this little plastic off. Beautiful. Looks so good. Alright, well, I appreciate you guys so much for watching another video of mine. This one was actually pretty cool. It wasn't super difficult like the previous 4 or 5 videos have been. And you know, it's kind of wiring, which wiring is kind of annoying, but I still enjoyed it, and it's super cool. It'll help me out with the track and just monitoring the health of my car and my engine. And as you guys know, we got issues, so I don't want to blow another engine. I want at least one working car. So very excited about this, very happy that we have it in the car finally. And yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm going to the track in about a month or so. So I think my next video that I'm going to be posting is kind of track prep. So we're going to be taking a look at a few things that you should typically take a look at when you're taking your car to the track, including, you know, your brakes, your suspension, make sure all your suspension is tight, your coolant, make sure your coolant is high. We're going to check oil, make sure our oil level is good. Our tires, make sure we have enough tire wear. And my windshield, so I have a little crack in my windshield, so I want to fill that up with some stuff from AutoZone just to kind of prevent a full shatter or even just like a line across my windshield. I don't want that at the track, so we're going to take care of that. And yeah, if I see that anything needs to be replaced, then I'm going to go ahead and order that, get ready for the track before we actually go. That's it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please, if you guys like my videos, like, subscribe. If you guys have any questions or want me to go through any of this personally, put a message in the comment section of this video, and I'll go ahead and answer and tell you how to contact me too, so you can get more of a one-on-one kind of experience. But yeah, I guess that's it. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.